9:47 p.m. That's the exact moment Sarah Bennett's daughter died inside her womb. Not from complications,
It hurts
not
so
from an
much,
accident,
I can't.
from murder. A designer
Look at me.
heel brought
It's gonna
down
be
with
fine.
full
Just keep
force
breathing.
on an 8-month pregnant belly by the blonde woman wearing her robe, living in her house, sleeping with her husband. And that's not even the worst part. You see,
The
Sarah's
coordinates on this
husband didn't
manifest
just
match
cheat.
satellite imagery.
He
That confirms
orchestrated
it. We move
everything,
tonight.
the affair,
Agreed.
the poisoning,
Devin, patch the
the
drive
plan
into
to
the main
erase
system.
his pregnant wife completely. He even moved his mistress into their guest house, 50 feet from where Sarah slept with their 3-year-old son. But here's what Brad Bennett didn't know. His quiet, trusting wife, the one he thought would never fight back, she had 3 brothers, and they were coming. What happens next involves breaking down doors, exposing millions in stolen money, courtroom devastation, and a revenge so complete that both the husband and mistress are now rotting in prison cells. But Sarah paid the ultimate price. Her baby girl, Emma Rose, never opened her eyes, never took a breath, never had a chance. This is that story, every brutal, heartbreaking, triumphant second of it. If you're ready for a tale of betrayal, survival, and justice that will leave you speechless, smash that subscribe button now. Drop a comment telling me what you would do in Sarah's position. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because some stories need to be told. And this is one of them. Let's go. Sarah Bennett's world ended at 9:47 on a Thursday night. She lay on the cold, hardwood floor of the lake house living room, her hands pressed against her swollen belly. Blood pooled beneath her, spreading across the polished wood in a dark stain that seemed to grow with each ragged breath. Above her, a blonde woman in designer heels stood with her foot positioned over Sarah's 8-month pregnant stomach, preparing to stomp down again. "Stop," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the ringing in her ears. "Please, not my baby." The woman, Vanessa, smiled. It was a terrible smile, full of rage and satisfaction. "You took everything from me," she said. "Now I'm taking everything from you." 3-year-old Jake screamed from the corner of the room. "Mama, Mama, stop hurting my mommy." Time seemed to slow. Sarah saw Vanessa's heel rise higher, saw the muscles in her leg tense. This was it. This was how she would lose everything. Then the front door exploded inward with a crash that shook the entire house. 3 men burst through the splintered doorway, moving with the coordinated intensity of soldiers. The first man, broad-shouldered and moving like he had military training, tackled Vanessa mid-stomp. They crashed into the dining table with enough force to collapse it, sending plates and glasses flying across the room. "Sarah! Oh God, Sarah!" The second man dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering over her body, as if afraid to touch her and cause more damage. His face was wet with tears. "Stay with me. You have to stay with me." The third man, lean and wiry, scooped Jake up from the corner, turning the child's face away from the violence. "Don't look, buddy," he said softly. "Don't look at mommy right now." Sarah's vision blurred. She recognized the voices, her brothers, Ryan, Marcus, and Devin. They had come. Somehow they had known. Vanessa fought like a wild animal, clawing and kicking. She managed to wrench free from Ryan's grip long enough to pull something from her purse. Light glinted off metal. A knife. "You stupid bitch!" Vanessa screamed, lunging towards Sarah with the blade raised. "This is all your fault." Ryan moved faster than Sarah thought possible. He caught Vanessa's wrist, twisted, and the knife clattered to the floor. Within seconds, he had her pinned face down on the hardwood, his knee pressing into her back. "You're not going anywhere," Ryan growled. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer with each passing second. Marcus's hands were gentle as he checked Sarah's pulse. "Help is coming," he said, his voice cracking. "Just hold on. Please, Sarah, hold on." Sarah's hand moved to her belly. She had felt Emma kicking all day, her daughter's movements strong and reassuring. Now there was nothing. No movement, no response. Just pain and a terrifying stillness. "The baby," Sarah whispered. "Emma, I can't feel her. Marcus, I can't feel her moving." Marcus's expression told her everything she needed to know. Even before he opened his mouth, the horror in his eyes, the way his hands trembled. "The ambulance is almost here," he said. "Emma's going to be fine. She's a fighter, just like her mama." But Sarah knew, deep in her core, beneath the physical pain and the shock, she knew. Vanessa was still screaming, her voice shrill and broken. Brad, Brad, you said it would be easy. You said she wouldn't fight back. Sarah's husband's name cut through the chaos like another knife wound. Brad, her husband, the man she had married 6 years ago, promising to love and cherish forever. He had done this. He had set all of this in motion. The room tilted. Voices became distant and muffled. Sarah's vision darkened at the edges. Sarah! Ryan's voice, sharp with panic. Sarah, stay awake! Look at me! But the darkness was pulling her down into a place where there was no pain, no fear, no awareness of the life slipping away inside her womb. The last thing she heard before everything went black was Jake's small voice, raw from crying. Mommy, Mommy, wake up! Please wake up! 72 hours earlier. Sarah Bennett woke at 6 in the morning, just like she did every day. The Texas sun filtered through the bedroom curtains, casting golden light across the master bedroom of their $800,000 house in the Austin suburbs. Beside her, the other half of the bed was empty. Brad's side hadn't been slept in. She told herself it didn't bother her. He had been working late a lot recently. A big real estate development deal was closing, and Brad always said that success required sacrifices. Sarah had made plenty of sacrifices. Her career, her independence, her sense of self. She pressed her hand to her belly and felt Emma kick in response. At least she still had this, her baby girl, due in 4 weeks. And Jake, her beautiful 3-year-old son, who would burst into the room any minute, demanding pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Sarah pushed herself out of bed, her movements slow and awkward with the weight of her pregnancy. She caught sight of herself in the mirror. 34 years old, dark circles under her eyes, wearing an old maternity nightgown that had seen better days. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. 5 years ago, she had been a marketing director at a successful tech startup. She had worn power suits and given presentations to rooms full of investors. She had been confident, ambitious, someone who knew her own worth. Then she met Brad Bennett, charming, successful Brad with his real estate empire and his easy smile. He had swept her off her feet with expensive dinners and weekend getaways. Within a year, they were married. Within 2 years, Jake was born. Brad had suggested she stay home with their son. We can afford it, he had said. Jake needs his mother. You can always go back to work later. Later never came. Sarah made her way downstairs to the kitchen. The house was pristine, decorated in shades of white and gray that Brad's interior designer had chosen. It looked like something from a magazine spread. Perfect. Sterile. Nothing out of place. She started the coffee maker, measuring out 2 scoops of grounds and adding the oat milk Brad preferred. 2 sugars, stirred clockwise 12 times. She had learned to make it exactly the way he liked it, because anything less earned a comment about her inability to get simple things right. Jake's lunchbox came next. She cut his sandwich into dinosaur shapes using cookie cutters, added apple slices cut into stars, a juice box, and a little note telling him she loved him. These small acts of love were all she had control over anymore. Brad walked into the kitchen at 6:30, his phone pressed to his ear. He was already dressed in an expensive suit, his hair perfectly styled. He grabbed the coffee cup without acknowledging her, still talking to whoever was on the other end of the call. Morning, honey, Sarah said softly. Don't forget we have the ultrasound at 3 this afternoon. Brad barely glanced at her. He held up one finger, still listening to his phone conversation, then shook his head. Can't make it, he said, covering the phone with his hand. Client meeting. Reschedule it. Brad, this is the last ultrasound before Emma's born. They're checking to make sure everything is okay with her position and… Sarah, I said reschedule it. His tone was sharp, dismissive. I don't have time for this right now. He left without another word, without a kiss goodbye, without any acknowledgement that he was walking away from his pregnant wife and his family. The front door closed with a firm click, and Sarah was alone in the perfect, empty kitchen. She stared at the untouched coffee cup, still steaming on the counter. Her smile faded. Her hand moved to her belly again, seeking comfort from the life growing inside her. A small voice in her head whispered the truth she had been avoiding for months. This wasn't normal. This wasn't how a husband treated his wife. This wasn't love. But Sarah pushed the voice down, locked it away in the same mental box where she kept all her doubts and fears. Every marriage had rough patches. The stress of a new baby could strain even the strongest relationships. Things would get better after Emma was born. They had to. Jake appeared in the doorway, his hair sticking up in every direction, his favorite dinosaur pajamas wrinkled from sleep. "Mama, I'm hungry." Sarah's heart expanded. This, this was what mattered. Her children, her family. She would keep it together for them. "Let's make some pancakes," she said, forcing brightness into her voice. "Dinosaur ones." Jake cheered and climbed onto a kitchen chair. Sarah got to work, mixing batter and heating the griddle, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in her chest. She didn't notice Brad's second phone buzzing in his gym bag by the garage door. She didn't see the name that flashed across the screen. V. Cole. She didn't know that her perfect suburban life was built on a foundation of lies that was about to crumble beneath her feet. If she had known what was coming, maybe she would have run. Maybe she would have grabbed Jake, packed a bag, and disappeared before everything fell apart. But Sarah Bennett still believed in fairy tales. She still believed that love could conquer all, that good wives who did everything right would be rewarded with happy endings. She was about to learn how wrong she had been. Later that morning, after dropping Jake at preschool, Sarah stood in the kitchen folding laundry. It was mindless work, the kind that let her thoughts wander. She found herself thinking about the early days with Brad, when he had been attentive and loving. When had things changed? She couldn't pinpoint an exact moment. It had been gradual, like a photograph fading in sunlight. The credit card bill sat on the counter, and Sarah picked it up without really thinking about it. Brad handled all their finances. He said it was easier that way, more efficient. But Sarah had been feeling unsettled lately, and she couldn't quite explain why. She scanned the charges, routine expenses, groceries, gas. Then something caught her eye. A restaurant charge. $347 at a steakhouse downtown. Last Tuesday night. Last Tuesday, Brad had said he was working late at the office. Sarah's heart started beating faster. She scrolled through more charges. Another restaurant, a jewelry store, a flower shop, all on days when Brad had claimed to be working. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Just a photo, no message. Sarah opened it and felt the room tilt. It was a picture of Brad. He was at a restaurant, sitting across from a blonde woman. They were holding hands across the table. Brad was smiling in a way Sarah hadn't seen in years. Open, happy, in love. The woman was young, maybe late 20s. Beautiful in an intimidating way, with perfect makeup and expensive clothes. She was laughing at something Brad had said. Sarah's hands trembled so badly she almost dropped the phone. Another text came through. This time there were words. "Thought you should know who your husband's been spending his evenings with. Sorry, a friend." Sarah sank onto the kitchen floor, her back against the cabinets. Emma kicked inside her, and Sarah pressed her hand to her belly. She wanted to cry, to scream, to throw things, but mostly she just felt numb. How long had this been going on? Who was this woman? Did everyone know except her? She thought about confronting Brad, demanding answers, but she was afraid. Afraid of his anger, his gaslighting, his ability to make her doubt her own perceptions. Afraid that if she pushed too hard, he would leave her. And then what would she do? She had no job, no income of her own. The house was in Brad's name. She had no leverage, no power. Sarah sat on that kitchen floor for a long time, her pregnant belly pressed against her knees, her future crumbling around her. She didn't know yet that the blonde woman's name was Vanessa Cole. She didn't know that Vanessa was already planning to take everything Sarah had. She didn't know that in 72 hours, she would be fighting for her daughter's life. All she knew was that the fairy tale was over, and she had no idea how to survive the nightmare that was about to begin. Sarah spent the rest of Monday in a fog. She went through the motions, picking up Jake from preschool, making dinner that no one would eat with her, giving Jake his bath, and reading him bedtime stories. All the while, the photo burned in her mind. Brad's hand holding that woman's hand. His smile. That genuine, unguarded smile she hadn't seen directed at her in years. After Jake fell asleep, Sarah sat in the dark living room with her laptop. She knew she shouldn't, but she couldn't help herself. She searched for information, trying to piece together the puzzle of her husband's betrayal. The credit card statements told a story. Dinners at expensive restaurants on nights Brad claimed to be working. Hotel rooms charged during supposed business trips. Jewelry purchases she had never received. The evidence was overwhelming when she started looking for it. But it was the phone records that broke her. Sarah had access to their family cell phone account, something Brad had probably forgotten about. She pulled up his call logs and saw it immediately. Hundreds of calls and texts to a single number. Sometimes they'd talk for hours, late at night, early in the morning. During times when Brad was supposed to be at work or with his family, Sarah cross-referenced the number with social media. It didn't take long to find her. Vanessa Cole, 28 years old, blonde, beautiful. Her Instagram was full of photos showing a glamorous lifestyle. Designer clothes, expensive restaurants, exotic vacations. Recent photos showed her at construction sites and real estate developments. She was Brad's assistant. His assistant. The woman Sarah had never met, never heard much about, was the one sleeping with her husband. Sarah's hands shook as she scrolled through Vanessa's posts. There were subtle hints everywhere. Once she knew what to look for, a photo of Vanessa's hand wearing a bracelet Sarah recognized as one Brad had claimed he bought for a client's wife. A picture of a sunset taken from a hotel balcony in San Antonio, posted the same weekend Brad said he was there for business. Comments from friends asking about Vanessa's mystery man, to which she responded with winking emojis. The rage hit Sarah all at once, so powerful it made her dizzy. This woman had been sleeping with her husband, possibly for months or longer, while Sarah was home pregnant with Brad's child. Vanessa had accepted gifts and trips and attention that should have been Sarah's. She had stolen Sarah's husband and felt no shame about it. Sarah wanted to call Brad immediately to scream at him, to demand answers. But something stopped her. A small voice of self-preservation that said if she confronted him now, while she had no plan and no support, he would steamroll right over her. He would gaslight her, make her doubt what she had seen, turn everything around until somehow it became Sarah's fault. She needed to be smart about this, strategic, but she had no idea where to even start. Tuesday morning, Sarah barely slept. She kept checking her phone, looking at that photo of Brad and Vanessa, trying to make it not be real. When Brad came home at 2 a.m, reeking of perfume, Sarah pretended to be asleep. She listened to him shower, washing away the evidence of wherever he had been, with whoever he had been. At breakfast, Sarah tried to act normal. Jake chattered about his upcoming preschool field trip. Brad scrolled through his phone, barely acknowledging either of them. Sarah set his coffee down in front of him, made exactly the way he liked it. "Brad," she said carefully, "can we talk later? When you have some time?" He didn't look up from his phone. "About what?" "About us, about our marriage." Now he looked at her, and the expression on his face made Sarah's stomach turn. It was annoyance mixed with something like contempt. "Sarah, I don't have time for one of your emotional conversations right now. I have a huge deal closing this week." "I know, but I just feel like we've been distant lately. And with the baby coming soon—" "Jesus Christ, Sarah." Brad stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his coffee cup. "Do you have any idea how much pressure I'm under? I'm trying to provide for this family, and all you do is complain that I'm not paying enough attention to you. Maybe if you had kept your career, you'd understand what real stress feels like." The words hit like physical blows. Sarah felt tears sting her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I gave up my career because you asked me to. You said Jake needed me at home. I said you could stay home if you wanted. I didn't force you. That was your choice." Brad grabbed his briefcase. "I'm late. Don't wait up tonight. I'll probably be at the office until after midnight." He left without kissing her goodbye, without acknowledging Jake, without a single word of affection or care. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, her hands pressed flat against the wood to keep them from shaking. Jake looked at her with wide, worried eyes. "Why is Daddy always mad at you?" he asked in his small voice. Sarah's heart broke into 1,000 pieces. She pulled her son onto her lap, holding him close. "Daddy's just stressed, baby. It's not about you or me. Sometimes grown-ups get overwhelmed." But even as she said the words, she knew they were lies. Brad wasn't overwhelmed. He was checked out. He had replaced his family with Vanessa Cole in whatever fantasy life they were building together, and Sarah had no idea how to compete with that. That afternoon, Sarah made a decision. She needed to see Vanessa for herself. She needed to understand who this woman was who had destroyed her marriage. She drove to Brad's office building downtown. Jake strapped in his car seat in the back. She told herself she was just bringing Brad lunch, trying to do something nice, trying to save her marriage. But really, she wanted confirmation. She needed to see the mistress with her own eyes. The receptionist in Brad's office was a young woman named Kelly, who had always been kind to Sarah. When Sarah walked in carrying a bag from Brad's favorite deli, Kelly's smile faltered. "Mrs. Bennett, oh, hi. Did Brad know you were coming?" "I wanted to surprise him," Sarah said, trying to sound cheerful. "Is he in his office?" Kelly hesitated, and in that hesitation, Sarah saw the truth. Kelly knew. She knew about Vanessa. Probably everyone in this office knew. "He's in a meeting with Vanessa," Kelly said finally. "Should I let him know you're here?" Vanessa. So she was here. "Who's Vanessa?" Sarah asked, even though she already knew. "Vanessa Cole, his assistant. She's been handling the Riverside Development Project with him." The lies were so casual, so practiced. His assistant. As if that explained everything. As if it made sense for Brad to be in constant contact with his assistant, talking to her until midnight, taking her to expensive dinners. "I'll wait," Sarah said. She sat in the lobby with Jake, who played with toy cars on the floor. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. She was about to come face to face with the woman who was sleeping with her husband. What would she do? What would she say? The conference room door opened after about 10 minutes. Brad emerged first, laughing at something. Then she appeared. Vanessa Cole was even more beautiful in person than in her photos. She wore a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than Sarah's entire wardrobe. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves around her shoulders. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like she belonged in a magazine spread, not standing in an office building in Austin, Texas. She was touching Brad's arm, still laughing at whatever joke he had made. They looked comfortable together. Easy, like a couple who had been together for years. Then Vanessa saw Sarah, and something flickered across her face. Not embarrassment, not guilt. If anything, it looked like satisfaction, like she had been waiting for this moment. Brad's face went pale. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" Sarah stood, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward. She held up the lunch bag, suddenly feeling pathetic. "I brought you lunch." Vanessa stepped forward, extending her hand with a confident smile. "You must be Sarah. I've heard so much about you. I'm Vanessa Cole." Her grip was firm, almost aggressive. Her hand was warm and dry while Sarah's palm was sweating. Up close, Sarah could see that Vanessa was wearing perfume. Expensive perfume. The same scent that had been clinging to Brad's clothes for months. "Congratulations on the baby," Vanessa said, her eyes dropping to Sarah's belly. The expression on her face was complex. Jealousy? Calculation? Sarah couldn't quite read it. "Brad talks about how excited he is to be a father again." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that Sarah almost believed it herself, except she knew better. Brad hadn't been excited about this pregnancy. He had been distant, distracted, annoyed by every doctor's appointment and baby-related decision. "Thank you," Sarah managed to say. "It's nice to finally meet you. Brad's mentioned you." Another lie. Brad had barely mentioned Vanessa at all, which Sarah now realized was deliberate. He had been hiding her, minimizing her importance, making sure Sarah never got curious enough to look too closely. "I should get back to work," Vanessa said. "We have a lot to finish before the Riverside closing." She touched Brad's arm again, a casual gesture that spoke of intimacy and familiarity. "I'll see you later." Brad nodded and Vanessa walked away, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Sarah watched her go, watched the way she moved with absolute confidence, like a woman who knew exactly what she wanted and how to get it. "We need to talk," Sarah said quietly, aware of Kelly watching from the reception desk, aware of Jake playing at her feet. Brad's jaw tightened. "Not here." "Then where? You're never home." "Sarah, don't start. Not now, not here." But Sarah couldn't stop herself. The words came tumbling out, fueled by months of silence and suspicion. "How long have you been working with her?" 6 months. Why?" She seemed very familiar with you. Brad's expression turned cold. Jesus, Sarah, she's my assistant. Are you seriously doing this right now? Are you really going to make a scene in my office because you're jealous of my employee? The gaslighting was immediate and effective. Sarah felt her certainty waver. Was she overreacting? Was this all in her head? I'm not jealous, she said, but her voice was weak. I just, you just what? Don't trust me? After everything I do for this family? Brad stepped closer, lowering his voice so Kelly couldn't hear. Maybe if you paid more attention to our marriage instead of obsessing over being pregnant, I wouldn't have to work so much. Maybe if you made an effort to be the woman I married instead of this paranoid, needy version of yourself, we wouldn't have these problems. Each word was a knife. Sarah felt them cutting into her, bleeding out her confidence and self-worth. This was what Brad did. He took Sarah's legitimate concerns and turned them into evidence of her inadequacy. I have to get back to work, Brad said. Take Jake home. We'll talk about this later. He walked back to his office without taking the lunch he had brought, without a goodbye, without any acknowledgement that he had just destroyed his wife in the middle of his office building. Sarah stood there for a long moment, the lunch bag hanging from her hand. Kelly was studiously avoiding eye contact, pretending to be absorbed in her computer. Jake tugged on Sarah's hand. Mama, can we go home now? Yes, baby, Sarah whispered. Let's go home. As they walked to the car, Sarah caught her reflection in the building's glass doors. She looked exhausted, worn down, defeated. This was what 6 years of marriage to Brad Bennett had done to her. And the worst part was, she still wasn't ready to leave. Despite everything, despite knowing about Vanessa, despite the way Brad treated her, Sarah still clung to the hope that things could get better. That Brad would wake up one day and remember why he married her. That their family could be whole and happy again. She didn't realize yet that hope was the most dangerous thing she could hold on to. Because while Sarah was hoping and waiting and trying to be a better wife, Vanessa Cole was making her move. And by the time Sarah understood what was happening, it would already be too late. That evening, Sarah tried to talk to Brad. She waited until Jake was asleep, then found her husband in his home office, staring at his computer screen. Brad, we need to talk about this afternoon. He didn't look away from his computer. There's nothing to talk about. You humiliated me in your office. You made me feel crazy for having completely reasonable concerns about your assistant. Vanessa is not just my assistant. She's a valuable member of my team. And yes, Sarah, you acted crazy, showing up unannounced, interrogating me about my employee. It was embarrassing. Sarah felt her anger rising, but she fought to keep her voice calm. I saw the credit card bills, Brad. All those restaurant charges on nights you said you were working late. The hotel rooms. The jewelry I never received. Brad finally turned to look at her, and his expression was pure ice. Are you accusing me of something? I'm asking you to be honest with me. I am being honest. Those were business expenses, client dinners, hotels for out-of-town meetings, gifts for partners' wives. This is my job, Sarah. This is how I make the money that pays for this house, for your car, for everything you and Jake need. But apparently my working hard to provide for my family makes me the villain. He was doing it again, twisting everything, making her doubt what she knew to be true. What about all the phone calls to Vanessa? Hundreds of them, Brad. Late at night, early in the morning. Brad stood up, and his face darkening. How do you know about my phone calls? Have you been spying on me? I have access to our phone account. I wasn't spying, I was just what? Investigating me like I'm some kind of criminal? This is what I'm talking about, Sarah. This paranoid, controlling behavior. It's not healthy. Maybe you should talk to someone, a therapist, because this isn't normal. Sarah felt like she was losing her mind. She knew what she had seen. She knew about the affair. But Brad was so convincing in his denials, so confident in his gaslighting, that she found herself questioning her own perceptions. I'm not crazy, she whispered. I didn't say you were crazy. I said you might need help. There's a difference. Brad moved past her toward the door. I'm going to the office. Don't wait up. It's 9 o'clock at night, and I have work to do. That's what you don't seem to understand. I don't get to clock out at 5 and be done. I have responsibilities. He left, and Sarah stood in the empty office, tears streaming down her face. She knew he was going to see Vanessa. She knew it with absolute certainty, but she had no proof, no way to stop him, no leverage to demand the truth. She walked to the bedroom window and watched Brad's car pull out of the driveway. Then she did something she had never done before. She called her older brother. Ryan Bennett answered on the first ring. "Sarah, you okay?" Just hearing his voice made Sarah start crying harder. Ryan was 38, 4 years older than Sarah, and he had practically raised her after their parents died in a car accident when she was 12. He was protective to the point of aggression, with a temper that had cost him relationships and jobs over the years. But he had always been there for Sarah. "I think Brad is having an affair," she said through her tears. Ryan was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "Tell me everything." Sarah poured out the whole story, the credit card charges, the phone records, the photos someone had sent her, the confrontation at Brad's office. By the time she finished, she could hear Ryan breathing hard on the other end of the line. "I'm coming to Austin," he said. "Ryan, no, I don't want to make this worse." "Sarah, he's cheating on you while you're 8 months pregnant. It's already worse. I'm calling Marcus and Devin. We're having a family meeting." "Please don't. I just needed someone to talk to. I'm probably overreacting." "Stop," Ryan said firmly. "Stop making excuses for him. And I saw the warning signs at your wedding, and I didn't say anything. That was my mistake. I'm not making it again." After they hung up, Sarah felt both relieved and terrified. She had set something in motion, and she wasn't sure she could control where it would lead. The next morning, Wednesday, Sarah woke to find a text from Marcus, her middle brother. Marcus was 35, a high school history teacher in Houston. He was the family peacemaker, the one who always saw both sides of every argument. His message was gentle but firm. "Ryan told me what's happening. I love you, and I'm here for whatever you need. But Sarah, you need to start documenting everything. Take photos of the credit card statements. Save the phone records. If this goes where we think it's going, you'll need evidence." Sarah's youngest brother, Devin, sent a message too. Devin was 32, a construction worker in San Antonio who had struggled with opioid addiction after an injury on a job site 3 years ago. Sarah had paid for his rehab, never judging him, never giving up on him. His message was simple. "Whatever you need, sis, I owe you everything." Having her brother's support gave Sarah a tiny spark of courage. Maybe she wasn't crazy. Maybe her instincts were right. She spent the morning following Marcus's advice, taking photos of every piece of evidence she could find. The credit card statements, the phone records, the photo of Brad and Vanessa at the restaurant. She created a folder on her computer and backed everything up to the cloud. Then, that afternoon, everything changed. Sarah was folding laundry in the bedroom when she glanced out the window. Someone was moving around in their guest house by the pool. The guest house had been locked for months, used only for storage. Sarah's heart started pounding. Was someone breaking in? She walked outside, her pregnant belly making her movements slow and awkward. The guest house door was open. Inside, she could hear someone moving around. Sarah pushed the door open and froze. Vanessa Cole was unpacking suitcases in the guest house. She was hanging clothes in the closet, arranging toiletries in the bathroom, making herself at home. "What are you doing here?" Sarah demanded, her voice shaking. Vanessa turned. "Is she?" And if she was surprised to see Sarah, she didn't show it. "Oh, hi, Sarah. Brad didn't tell you? My apartment flooded yesterday. Complete disaster. He offered to let me stay here while it's being repaired." Wasn't that sweet of him? Sarah felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. Brad had moved his mistress into their property, into their guest house, where she could see their family, their home, their life. "He didn't mention it," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. "That's so like Brad," Vanessa said with a laugh. "He's always forgetting to communicate things. But don't worry, I'll stay out of your way. I know you're busy with Jake and getting ready for the baby. I won't be any trouble at all." Sarah noticed what Vanessa was wearing. A silk robe. Sarah's silk robe, the one Brad had given her for their anniversary 2 years ago. The one Sarah hadn't been able to find for weeks. "That's my robe," Sarah said quietly. Vanessa looked down, then back up at Sarah with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, is it? Brad said I could borrow it. I hope you don't mind. It's just so comfortable. The disrespect was breathtaking. Vanessa wasn't even trying to hide what was happening. She was moving into Sarah's property, wearing Sarah's clothes, sleeping with Sarah's husband, and acting like it was all perfectly normal. I need to talk to Brad, Sarah said. He's at a meeting. Won't be back until late. Vanessa turned back to her unpacking. But I'll tell him you stopped by. Sarah walked back to the main house in a daze. She could barely breathe. The guest house was maybe 50 feet from their back door. She would be able to see Vanessa every day. Watch her moving around, living her best life, stealing Sarah's husband. The moment Brad walked through the door that evening, Sarah confronted him. You moved Vanessa into our guest house without even asking me? Brad set down his briefcase with exaggerated patience. Her apartment flooded. What was I supposed to do? Let my employee be homeless? You could have asked me first. This is our home, Brad. Our property. I should have a say in who stays here. Our home. Brad's voice was cold. I pay the mortgage on this house, Sarah. I make the decisions about this property. You live here because I provide for you. Don't forget that. The words hung in the air like poison. Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. I'm your wife, she whispered. This is supposed to be our home, our partnership. Partnership implies you're contributing something, Brad said. What exactly do you contribute, sir? You don't work. You don't bring in any income. I pay for everything. The house, the cars, the food, Jake's preschool, your doctor's appointments, everything. So yes, I get to make decisions about my property. Sarah's hands were shaking. I gave up my career because you asked me to. I take care of our son. I'm about to give birth to your daughter. No one forced you to give up your career. That was your choice. And taking care of Jake, that's what mothers do. You don't get a medal for being a parent. Brad stepped closer, his face hard. Frankly, Sarah, you're being embarrassing. Paranoid about Vanessa, making scenes at my office, questioning my decisions about my own property. It's hormonal, I understand, but you need to get it under control. Brad, please. Sarah hated how desperate she sounded. Something about her feels wrong. The way she looks at me, the way she talks to you. Please ask her to leave. You're being ridiculous, hormonal and ridiculous. Brad grabbed his laptop bag. I'm going to the office. Vanessa and I have work to finish. Don't wait up. He walked out, leaving Sarah standing in the kitchen, trembling with rage and humiliation and fear. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling Emma kick inside her. Through the window, she could see lights on in the guest house. Vanessa was out there in Sarah's robe, on Sarah's property, probably texting Sarah's husband. This was the first peak of despair. Sarah finally understood the truth. Her husband had moved his mistress onto their property. He was gaslighting Sarah, making her doubt her own sanity. And Sarah was 8 months pregnant, financially dependent, with no legal right to the house she lived in. Brad had refinanced the house 6 months ago without telling her. She remembered now, him bringing her papers to sign, saying it was just routine paperwork. She hadn't read the documents carefully. She had trusted him. Now Sarah realized what he had done. He had removed her name from the deed. The house was entirely in his name. Legally, Sarah had no claim to it. She couldn't force Vanessa to leave. She couldn't even force Brad to leave. She was trapped, pregnant, powerless, and trapped. Sarah pressed her hand to her belly and felt Emma's strong kicks. I'm so sorry, baby girl, she whispered. I thought I was building us a good life. I thought your daddy loved us. But Sarah was beginning to understand a terrible truth. Brad didn't love them. Maybe he never had. And now, with Vanessa in the picture, he was actively working to replace them. Sarah just didn't know yet how far Brad was willing to go to make that happen. The next morning, Thursday, Sarah woke up feeling dizzy. Not the normal pregnancy dizziness she had experienced before, but something worse. The room spun when she tried to sit up, and her stomach churned with nausea that had nothing to do with morning sickness. She made it to the bathroom just in time to throw up. Her hands shook as she gripped the toilet, sweat breaking out across her forehead. Something was wrong. This wasn't normal. Jake appeared in the doorway, his face worried. Mommy, are you sick? I'm okay, baby, Sarah managed to say, though she wasn't sure it was true. Just give Mommy a minute. She pulled herself up using the sink, catching sight of her reflection. She looked terrible, pale with dark circles under her eyes that seemed to have appeared overnight. Her hands were trembling. Sarah made her way downstairs, holding onto the railing for support. She needed to get Jake breakfast, pack his lunch, get him ready for preschool. The dizziness made every step feel dangerous, but she pushed through it. This was what mothers did. They pushed through. In the kitchen, she opened the cupboard for her prenatal vitamins. She took them every morning without fail, but when she picked up the bottle, something felt off. She shook it, and the rattling sounded different than usual. Sarah opened the bottle and poured a few pills into her palm. Most looked normal, the familiar pink and white capsules her doctor had prescribed. But two of them were different. Slightly different color, different coating. Wrong. Her heart started pounding. She lined the pills up on the counter, separating the normal ones from the wrong ones. Then she grabbed her phone and searched the imprint code on the suspicious pills. The results made her blood run cold. They weren't vitamins, they were sleeping pills, high-dosage prescription sleeping pills. Someone had tampered with her medication. Sarah's mind raced. The dizziness, the confusion, the extreme fatigue she had been experiencing for the past 2 weeks. She had thought it was pregnancy exhaustion, but it wasn't. She was being drugged. Who had access to her bathroom? Who could have opened her vitamin bottle and switched out some of the pills? Vanessa. Vanessa had been in the main house yesterday. Sarah had seen her walking around while Brad was at work, carrying a basket of laundry. At the time, Sarah had been too exhausted to care. Now she realized it had been a perfect opportunity. Sarah's hands shook so hard she almost dropped the pills. This wasn't just an affair. Vanessa was actively trying to hurt her, trying to make her sick, confused, unable to think clearly. Wait, hello. She called her OB, her voice shaking as she explained what she had found. The nurse told her to come in immediately. At the doctor's office an hour later, Sarah sat on the exam table while Dr. Harrison examined the suspicious pills she had brought in. These are definitely not prenatal vitamins, Dr. Harrison said, her face grave. These are sedatives, strong ones. If you've been taking these thinking they're vitamins, it could explain your symptoms. Have you been feeling dizzy, confused, unusually tired? Yes, Sarah whispered, for about 2 weeks. Who has access to your medications? Sarah explained about Vanessa, about Brad, about how her marriage was falling apart. Dr. Harrison listened with growing concern. Sarah, I need to be very direct with you. What you're describing sounds like more than marital problems. If someone is drugging you while you're pregnant, that's a crime. That's assault. You need to go to the police. But I don't have proof it was her. Brad will say I'm being paranoid. Dr. Harrison reached out and took Sarah's hand. Then we'll run blood tests. We'll document everything. And Sarah, you need to get somewhere safe for you and for your baby. Sarah left the doctor's office with a lab order for blood work and a head spinning with fear. She picked up Jake from preschool and drove home, her mind racing through her options. She should call the police. But what would she tell them? That she found pills in her vitamin bottle? Brad would say Sarah mixed up her medications? That she was confused because of pregnancy brain? Without proof, without evidence, it would be her word against his. She needed help. She needed her brothers. That evening, after Jake went to bed, Sarah called Ryan. Someone replaced my vitamins with sleeping pills, she said without preamble. I've been taking them for weeks thinking they were prenatal vitamins. Ryan's voice was deadly quiet. Where's Brad? At the office, with Vanessa. We're coming to Austin, tonight. Pack a bag for you and Jake. Don't tell Brad. When we get there, you're leaving with us. Ryan, I can't just leave. He'll accuse me of kidnapping Jake. He's drugging you, Sarah, while you're pregnant. Do you understand how serious that is? You could have lost the baby. You could have been seriously hurt. This isn't a marriage problem anymore. This is attempted murder. The words hit Sarah like ice water. Attempted murder. That's what this was. Someone was trying to hurt her, maybe even kill her. And the only person with a motive was her husband or the mistress he had moved onto their property. I'm scared, Sarah admitted. I know, but we're coming. Marcus and Devin too. We'll figure this out together. Just hold on, Sarah. We've got you. After they hung up, Sarah sat in the quiet house, hand on her belly. Emma was kicking, strong and insistent, reminding Sarah that she wasn't alone. She had a daughter to protect, a son who needed her, and three brothers who would move heaven and earth to keep her safe. For the first time in months, Sarah felt a tiny spark of hope. Sarah's brothers arrived at 2 in the morning, converging from 3 different Texas cities. Ryan came first, his security company truck screeching into the driveway. Marcus arrived 30 minutes later, still wearing his teacher clothes from work. Devin pulled up last, his construction company van dusty from the drive. Sarah met them outside, not wanting to wake Jake or alert Vanessa in the guest house. The moment Ryan saw her, his jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. "Jesus, Sarah, you look like hell." "Thanks," she said with a weak laugh. "I feel like it." Marcus pulled her into a hug, careful of her pregnant belly. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" "I thought I could handle it. I thought I was just being paranoid." Devin was staring at the guest house, where lights were still on, despite the late hour. "That's where she's staying?" "Yeah, that's Vanessa." "I'd like to have a conversation with her," Devin said, his voice tight. "Get in line," Ryan muttered. They went inside and Sarah told them everything. About the affair, the gaslighting, Brad removing her from the house deed, finding the pills. By the time she finished, all 3 brothers looked ready to commit violence. "We're taking you and Jake somewhere safe," Marcus said. "Tonight." "Where?" "The lake house," Ryan said. "Mom and Dad's old place." Their parents' lake house was about an hour outside Austin, left to all 4 siblings when their parents died. It had sat empty for years, used only occasionally for family gatherings. It was isolated, private, and most importantly, Brad didn't know about it. Sarah had never mentioned it to him. "I'll pack," Sarah said. "Make it fast," Ryan urged. "If Brad comes home and finds us here, this could get ugly." Sarah moved as quickly as her pregnant body would allow, throwing clothes and toiletries into bags. She packed Jake's favorite toys, his dinosaur pajamas, the blanket he couldn't sleep without. She grabbed important documents from Brad's office, birth certificates, social security cards, her medical records, anything she might need if she wasn't coming back. Jake woke up as she was lifting him from his bed. "Mama, where are we going?" "On an adventure with Uncle Ryan, Uncle Marcus, and Uncle Devin," Sarah said softly. "Won't that be fun? In the middle of the night?" "The best adventures happen at night." Jake accepted this with the easy logic of a 3-year-old. Within 30 minutes, they had everything loaded into Marcus's car. Ryan would follow in his truck. Devin would stay behind to make sure Brad didn't follow them, then join them at the lake house later. As they pulled out of the driveway, Sarah looked back at the house, her home for 6 years, the place where she had thought she would raise her family, grow old with her husband, build a life. Now it was just a prison she was escaping. Through the guest house window, Sarah saw Vanessa watching them leave. Even from a distance, Sarah could see the smile on her face. The lake house was exactly as Sarah remembered it. Small, rustic, filled with memories of happier times. Marcus helped her get Jake settled in one of the bedrooms, while Ryan checked all the locks and windows. "This place is secure," Ryan said. "No one's getting in here without us knowing." Sarah sank onto the old couch, exhaustion hitting her all at once. Marcus sat beside her, taking her hand. "You did the right thing, leaving." "Did I? Brad's going to lose his mind when he realizes we're gone. He'll say I kidnapped Jake. He'll try to get custody. Let him try," Marcus said firmly. "Texas is a mother's rights state. You didn't kidnap Jake. You removed your child from a dangerous situation. That's completely legal." "We're going to file a restraining order against Vanessa," Ryan added. "First thing in the morning. She violated your space, tampered with your medication, created a hostile environment. That's more than enough." "What about the drugging?" "I have a friend who's a private investigator," Ryan said. "I'm calling him tomorrow. We'll document everything, build a case. If we can prove she drugged you, that's attempted murder. She'll go to jail." Sarah wanted to believe them, wanted to believe that there was a way out of this nightmare. But a small, terrified part of her knew that Brad wasn't going to let her go easily. He had too much to lose. His reputation, his image as a family man, his control. And men like Brad didn't give up control without a fight. Her phone buzzed, a text from Brad. "Where the hell are you? Why is Jake's bed empty?" Sarah stared at the message, her hands shaking. Ryan saw it and gently took the phone from her. Don't respond. Not yet. Let him sweat. He's going to come looking for us. Let him try to find you, Ryan said grimly. He has no idea where you are. And even if he did, he'd have to go through me first. Sarah leaned back against the couch, one hand on her belly. Emma was quiet now, probably sleeping. Or maybe she could sense her mother's stress. Everything's going to be okay, Marcus said softly. We're not going to let anything happen to you or the babies. Sarah wanted to believe him. She really did. But somewhere deep in her gut, she knew this was just the beginning. Brad and Vanessa had already shown they were willing to drug a pregnant woman. What else were they capable of? Sarah was about to find out, and it would be far worse than anything she had imagined. Sarah woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through the lake house windows and the smell of toffee brewing. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then reality crashed back in. She was at the lake house. She had left Brad. She was in hiding with her brothers. In the kitchen, Ryan was making breakfast while Jake sat at the table coloring. Marcus was on his laptop, already working on legal documents. Morning, Ryan said, handing her a cup of tea. How'd you sleep? Not great. Sarah's phone had been buzzing all night with increasingly angry messages from Brad. She had turned it off around 3 in the morning, unable to deal with his rage. Don't look at your phone yet, Marcus said. Let me show you something first. He turned his laptop around. On the screen was a legal document. I've been researching. The restraining order against Vanessa is straightforward. We can file it this morning. But Sarah, there's something else you need to know. What? The house, when Brad refinanced it 6 months ago, he forged your signature on the documents that removed your name from the deed. That's fraud. We can prove it. Sarah's heart leaped. We can get the house back? Eventually, yes. But it'll take time to fight in court. Months, probably. And in the meantime, Brad has legal possession. The brief hope deflated. So I'm homeless. You're not homeless. You're here with us, and we're going to fight for what's yours. Marcus closed the laptop. But Sarah, I need you to prepare yourself. Brad's going to fight back. He's going to try to control the narrative, make himself look like the victim. You need to be ready for that. As if on cue, Sarah's phone rang. She had turned it back on to check messages, and now Brad's name flashed on the screen. Should I answer? Put it on speaker, Ryan said. Let's hear what he has to say. Sarah answered, her hand trembling. Hello. Where the hell are you? Brad's voice was furious. You took my son in the middle of the night without telling me. Do you have any idea how worried I've been? The lie was so smooth, so convincing, that for a second Sarah almost believed he actually cared. I'm somewhere safe with family. Safe? Safe from what? From me? Sarah, what has gotten into you? You moved your mistress into our guest house, Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. You removed my name from the house deed without telling me. Someone drugged my prenatal vitamins. I needed to get away. Jesus Christ, Sarah, you're not well. You need help. This paranoid delusion about Vanessa. I found the pills, Brad. I had them tested. Someone replaced my vitamins with sleeping pills. There was a pause. When Brad spoke again, his voice had changed. Harder, more calculating. You probably mixed up your bottles, made a mistake. You've been confused lately. Pregnancy brain. I didn't mix anything up. Look, I don't want to argue about this over the phone. Come home, bring Jake home. We'll sit down, talk about this like adults, figure out what's really going on. I'm not coming back. Sarah, think about what you're doing. Think about Jake. You can't just take him away from his father. That's kidnapping. Actually, it's not, Marcus interjected, leaning toward the phone. Hi, Brad. This is Marcus. Sarah has full legal right to remove Jake from what she perceives as a dangerous situation. In Texas, that's not kidnapping. That's good parenting. Marcus, what the hell are you doing there? Supporting my sister. Something you apparently stopped doing a long time ago. Brad's voice turned icy. I want to speak to my son. Jake's fine. He's safe. He's with family who love him. I swear to God, if you don't bring him back right now, I will have all of you arrested. Go ahead and try, Ryan's voice cut in. We've documented everything. The affair, the financial fraud, the drugging. You want to go to war with us? Bring it on. Brad hung up without another word. Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. He sounded so angry. Good, Ryan said. Let him be angry. Angry people make mistakes. Marcus's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and frowned. You need to see this. He pulled up Brad's Facebook page. Posted an hour ago was a status update. Dealing with a difficult family situation. Please respect our privacy during this challenging time. Hashtag family first. Hash staying strong. The comments were already rolling in. Praying for you, Brad. Whatever you're going through, you've got this. You're such a strong man. Sarah felt sick. He's making himself look like the victim. Of course he is, Marcus said. That's textbook abuser behavior. Control the narrative before the truth comes out. Ryan pulled up his own phone. Check Vanessa's Instagram. Sarah's stomach dropped as she saw the latest post. A photo of Vanessa in Sarah's kitchen, bright and smiling. The caption read, New beginnings, hashtag blessed, new chapter. But it was the comments that made Sarah's blood run cold. You look so happy. Glowing, are you? With a baby bottle emoji, OMG, is that a baby bump? Vanessa had replied to one, can't hide it much longer. Sarah stared at the screen, unable to process what she was seeing. She's pregnant. What? Ryan grabbed the phone, reading the post. That bitch. Brad got her pregnant. Sarah's voice was hollow. While I was pregnant. He was sleeping with her, getting her pregnant, planning a whole new family while I was home carrying his child. The betrayal was complete. It wasn't just an affair. Brad was replacing her, replacing their family. He had literally created a new version of what he had with Sarah, but with a younger, more beautiful woman who didn't question him or challenge him or expect him to be a decent human being. Marcus looked at Sarah with a concern. Are you okay? No. Sarah stood up, pacing the small living room. No, I'm not okay. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was building a whole new life with her. Sarah, he was going to erase me. That's what this was all about. The gaslighting, the drugging, moving Vanessa into the guest house. He wanted me gone so he could play house with her. The realization hit Sarah like a physical blow. Brad didn't want a divorce. Divorces were messy, expensive, bad for his image. He wanted Sarah to disappear. And if the drugging had continued, if Sarah had gotten sick enough, lost the baby, maybe even died from an overdose that looked accidental, Brad would have been free. The grieving widower, so tragic, so sympathetic, and Vanessa would have been right there to comfort him. We need to go to the police, Devin said. He had arrived during the phone call with Brad, and now he stood in the doorway looking murderous. Right now. File charges for the drugging, for fraud, for everything. We don't have enough proof yet, Marcus said. The pills Sarah found, yes, but connecting them directly to Vanessa or Brad, that's harder. Then we get proof, Ryan said. I'm calling my PI friend right now. We're going to investigate every aspect of Brad's life. His finances, his business, his relationship with Vanessa. Everything. Sarah sank back onto the couch, feeling the weight of her pregnant belly, the exhaustion in her bones. 8 months pregnant, hiding from her husband, watching him build a new family with his mistress. This was the second peak of despair. Sarah had lost her home, her marriage, her financial security. She was legally homeless. And Brad had already moved on, already created the replacement family he wanted. But as Sarah sat there, something shifted inside her. The victim died in that moment. The woman who had spent 6 years trying to be the perfect wife, who had swallowed her doubts and ignored red flags and made excuses for bad behavior. That woman was gone. Someone new was emerging. Someone harder. Someone angry. Someone who was done being afraid. Sarah looked up at her 3 brothers, all watching her with concern and love and a willingness to go to war for her. I want to destroy him, she said quietly. Ryan smiled grimly. Now we're talking. I want to find every piece of dirt on Brad, every lie, every crime, every shady business deal. I want to expose him to everyone who thinks he's such a great guy. I want to take everything from him the way he tried to take everything from me. We can do that, Devin said. I can get into his office. I still have my construction credentials. They were working on the building next to his. I can get in after hours. That's illegal, Marcus warned. So is drugging your pregnant wife, Devin shot back. I don't care about legal anymore. I care about Sarah and those babies. Marcus looked at Sarah. Are you sure about this? Once we start down this road, there's no going back. Sarah thought about Emma, kicking inside her, about Jake, coloring at the kitchen table, unaware that his family was imploding, about the 6 years she had wasted on a man who had never truly loved her. I'm sure, she said. Brad tried to erase me. Now I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who he is, and when I'm done, he'll have nothing left. Her brothers nodded, a unified front. They spent the next hours planning. Ryan would handle surveillance and investigation. Marcus would build the legal case. Devin would get inside Brad's office and find evidence. And Sarah? Sarah would survive. She would protect her children. She would become strong enough to face whatever came next, because she knew deep in her bones that this was far from over. Brad and Vanessa had already shown they were willing to hurt her to get what they wanted. Sarah just didn't know yet how far they would go, how much they were willing to destroy to win. The worst was still coming, and when it did, it would change everything. That night, after Jake was asleep, Devin headed back to Austin. The plan was simple but risky. Brad's real estate office was in a downtown high-rise. The building next door was undergoing renovations, and Devin's construction company had worked on it months ago. He still had his credentials, his hard hat, his access badge. If you get caught, Marcus started. I won't get caught, Devin interrupted. Trust me. I've been doing construction for 10 years. I know how to move through a building without being noticed. Sarah hugged him before he left. Please be careful. Always am. Devin squeezed her shoulder. This is for you, sis. For you and those babies. Brad's going to pay for what he did. After Devin left, Sarah, Ryan, and Marcus stayed up talking strategy. Sarah's phone kept buzzing with messages from Brad, each one more threatening than the last. If you don't bring Jake home tomorrow, I'm filing for emergency custody. You're unstable. Dangerous. No court will give you custody. This is your last chance, Sarah. Come home or face the consequences. Marcus read the messages with increasing concern. He's building a case against you, trying to make you look like the unstable one. Let him try, Sarah said, though her hands were shaking. We know the truth. The truth doesn't always matter in court. It's about what you can prove. Marcus pulled out his laptop again. We need to file that restraining order against Vanessa tomorrow, and we need to get ahead of Brad's narrative. How? Tell your story first, before he can control how people see you. Sarah thought about this. Brad had always controlled their image, the perfect family, the successful real estate developer and his devoted wife. No one knew about the gaslighting, the emotional abuse, the affair. Brad's friends, his business partners, their neighbors, they all thought he was a great guy. What if no one believes me? Sarah asked quietly. Some people won't, Ryan said honestly. Brad spent years building up his image, but some people will, and those are the ones who matter. The next morning, Friday, Devin called at 7 a.m. Sarah could hear the excitement in his voice. I got in, and Sarah, you're not going to believe what I found. Ryan put the call on speaker. Tell us. Brad's computer was unlocked. Idiot didn't even password protect it. I found spreadsheets showing he's been embezzling from his business partners. Over $2 million diverted to offshore accounts. One of the accounts is in Vanessa's name. Sarah felt her stomach drop. He's been stealing? For at least 2 years, maybe longer. I photographed everything. Hundreds of documents, bank statements, wire transfers, emails. Devin paused. Sarah, there's more. I found emails between Brad and Vanessa. Subject line, the Sarah problem. Sarah's blood ran cold. What do they say? Brad wrote, she's too trusting. This will be easier than I thought. Vanessa responded, what if she fights back? Brad said, she won't. She never does. The words were like knives. Sarah had been right. Brad had been actively plotting against her. The arrogance in his words, the confidence that Sarah would never fight back, made her want to scream. I'm forwarding everything to your secure email, Devin said. There's enough here to destroy him. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. He's going to prison, Sarah. Both of them are. After Devin hung up, Sarah, Ryan, and Marcus spent hours going through the documents Devin had sent. The evidence was overwhelming. Brad had been running a sophisticated embezzlement scheme for years, siphoning money from his business partners' investments and hiding it in offshore accounts. Some of the money had gone to funding his lifestyle with Vanessa. Expensive vacations, Brad had claimed, were work trips, jewelry, and gifts. A condo in downtown Austin that Sarah had never known about, where Brad and Vanessa had apparently been spending their afternoons. This changes everything, Marcus said. With this evidence, Brad's business partners can sue him. The state can file criminal charges. He's finished. Sarah felt a savage satisfaction. Good. But we need to be strategic about how we use this, Marcus continued. If we go to the police too soon, Brad might get wind of it and run. He's got money hidden all over the place. He could disappear. So what do? We set a trap. Ryan leaned back in his chair, a predatory smile on his face. We make Brad think he's won, get him confident. Then we spring it on him when he least expects it. Sarah thought about this. The idea of playing nice with Brad, of pretending to surrender, made her skin crawl, but she also wanted to see his face when he realized he had been caught. When he understood that Sarah wasn't the weak, trusting woman he thought she was. What kind of trap? She asked. The trap came together over the next 24 hours. Sarah would call Brad and offer to meet. She would claim she wanted to work things out, to save the marriage for Jake and Emma's sake. She would suggest meeting at his office with his business partners present, ostensibly to sign custody agreements and work out a civil arrangement. He'll think you're surrendering, Font Ryan said, giving him what he wants without a fight. And then? Then we expose him in front of the people whose money he stole. Let them see exactly who he is. Saturday morning, Sarah made the call. Her hands shook as she dialed Brad's number. He answered on the first ring. Sarah, I want to talk about fixing this. I'm listening. Not over the phone, in person, at your office, Monday afternoon. Bring your business partners. I want witnesses when I sign the custody papers. There was a long pause. Sarah could almost hear Brad's mind working, calculating whether this was a trick. Why do you want my partners there? Because I want them to see that I'm being reasonable, that I'm not the unstable person you've been saying I am. I'll sign whatever custody arrangement you want, but I want it properly witnessed and notarized. Another pause. Then, okay, Monday at 2 p.m., my conference room. I'll have the papers drawn up. And Brad, come alone. No Vanessa. Why? Because if I have to see her, I'll change my mind about all of this. Brad agreed, probably relieved that Sarah was finally giving up without more of a fight. After they hung up, Sarah felt sick. I can't believe I just did that. You did great, Marcus said. He bought it completely. Monday arrived with agonizing slowness. Sarah spent the weekend at the lake house preparing. Marcus coached her on what to say, how to stay calm, how to deliver the evidence in a way that would be most devastating. Ryan worked on gathering additional documentation. He had contacted Brad's business partners, claiming to have information about irregularities in their investments. All three men had agreed to attend Monday's meeting, curious and concerned. Devin compiled all the evidence into a thick folder: financial records, emails, photos, bank statements, everything Brad had been hiding for years. This is it, Ryan said Monday morning. Today, we destroy him. Sarah looked down at her pregnant belly. Emma was active today, kicking and moving. Sarah pressed her hand to the spot where she felt her daughter's foot. I'm doing this for you, she whispered, for you and your brother. So you never have to wonder if your father loved you. So you know I fought for you. They left for Austin at noon. The plan was for Sarah to arrive first, alone. Ryan would wait outside as backup. Marcus would come in after the meeting started, bringing Devin and the evidence. Sarah wore her best maternity dress, did her makeup carefully. She wanted to look composed, in control, not like a victim, like a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. At 1:55, Sarah walked into Brad's office building. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. This was it, the moment of truth. Kelly, the receptionist, looked surprised to see her. Mrs. Bennett, I didn't know you were coming in. Brad's expecting me, Sarah said with a calm she didn't feel. The conference room was on the 10th floor. Sarah rode the elevator up, her hands pressed to her belly, trying to steady her breathing. Emma kicked, as if sensing her mother's stress. The conference room door was closed. Sarah could hear voices inside, Brad's voice, and three other men. Sarah opened the door. Brad sat at the head of the long conference table, looking confident and relaxed in his expensive suit. His three business partners, Thompson, Rodriguez, and Anderson, sat along one side, looking confused about why they had been summoned. "Sarah," Brad said, standing, "thank you for coming. Please sit." Sarah sat, folding her hands on the table. "Thank you all for being here." "Sarah's agreed to sign custody papers," Brad explained to his partners. "Since you're all notaries, I thought you could witness the signing." "Of course," Thompson said. "Though, Brad, I have to say, I'm confused about why you needed all three of us here." "Because I wanted witnesses," Sarah said. "Not just for the custody agreement, but for something else." Brad's expression flickered. "Sarah, before I sign anything, I think your partners should know who they're doing business with." Sarah placed a folder on the table. Inside were copies of all the financial documents Devin had found. "What is this?" Rodriguez asked, opening the folder. "Evidence that Brad has been embezzling from your partnership for at least 2 years, possibly longer." The room exploded. The partners started reading, their faces going from confusion to shock to fury. Brad stood up, his face white. "Sarah, what are you doing?" "What I should have done months ago, telling the truth." Sarah pulled out more documents. The emails between Brad and Vanessa, the offshore accounts, the paper trail showing exactly how Brad had been stealing money and hiding it. "These accounts," Anderson said, his voice shaking with rage, "these transfers. Brad, you moved over $800,000 of our investment capital into a personal account." Those are business expenses," Brad stammered. "Business expenses?" Thompson threw down the papers. "You transferred money to an account in your assistant's name. What kind of business expense is that?" Rodriguez was scanning through emails on his phone. "I'm calling our lawyer right now. Brad, you're done." The conference room door opened. Marcus walked in, followed by Devin and Ryan. Ryan moved to stand behind Sarah, a silent protective presence. "Before you make any calls," Marcus said to the partners, "you should know that we have already forwarded copies of all this evidence to the Texas State Bar, the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, and the Travis County District Attorney's Office." Brad's face went from white to gray. "Sarah, please, we can work this out. We can fix this. "Fix what? Your fraud, your embezzlement? The fact that you tried to drug me while I was pregnant?" The partners all turned to stare at Brad, shock written across their faces. "She's lying," Brad said desperately. "She's unstable. You can't believe her." Sarah pulled out one more document, the lab results from her blood work, showing the presence of sedatives in her system despite her never having been prescribed any. "Someone replaced my prenatal vitamins with sleeping pills. Someone who had access to my bathroom. Someone who wanted me confused and sick." She pulled up Vanessa's Instagram on her phone, showing the photo Vanessa had posted from Sarah's kitchen, wearing Sarah's robe. "Your assistant has been living in my guest house, my home, with full access to my medications." "Brad," Thompson said slowly, "what the hell have you done?" Before Brad could answer, the conference room door opened again. 2 police officers walked in, followed by a detective in a suit. "Bradford Bennett," the detective said. "I'm Detective Rivera. We need you to come with us. We have questions about financial irregularities in your business dealings." Brad looked around the room wildly, seeing all the faces turned against him. His perfect image crumbling. His carefully constructed life falling apart. "Sarah," he said, his voice breaking, "please, think about Jake. Think about our family." "I am thinking about them," Sarah said coldly. "That's why I'm making sure they never have to see what a liar their father is." As the police led Brad away in handcuffs, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in months. Power, control, justice. The partners stood, looking at each other grimly. "We're suing him for every penny he stole," Rodriguez said, "and we're cooperating fully with the investigation." "Good," Sarah said, "so am I." After everyone left, Sarah sat alone in the conference room for a moment, her hand on her belly. Emma was kicking again, strong and insistent. "It's okay, baby girl," Sarah whispered. "Mommy did it. Mommy fought back." Ryan appeared in the doorway. You ready to go? Yeah. Understood. Bye. Sarah stood, feeling lighter than she had in months. Let's go home. As they walked to the elevator, Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Just a photo. Sarah opened it and felt her blood run cold. It was a picture of Jake, her son, playing in the yard at the lake house. The text that followed was simple. You took everything from me. Now I'm taking everything from you. Sarah's hands started shaking. Ryan, look. Ryan grabbed the phone, his face going hard. That's from today. Someone's been watching the lake house. They ran for the car. Ryan called Marcus and Devin immediately. Get to the lake house. Now, someone's been watching Jake. As they sped through Austin traffic, Sarah's phone rang. Vanessa's number. Don't answer it, Ryan said. But Sarah did anyway, putting it on speaker. You stupid bitch! Vanessa's voice was shrill with rage. You ruined everything. Brad's arrested. Our accounts are frozen. The police are looking for me. You destroyed my life. You destroyed your own life when you tried to destroy mine, Sarah said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Brad was mine. That life was supposed to be mine. I deserved it. You deserve nothing. You're a home wrecker and a criminal. I'm going to make you pay for this, Vanessa hissed. You and that precious baby of yours. You're going to regret ever crossing me. The line went dead. Ryan was already on the phone with the police. We need protection at the lake house immediately. We have a pregnant woman and a 3-year-old child who have been threatened by a woman named Vanessa Cole. Sarah tried to call Marcus. No answer. She tried Devin. No answer. Drive faster, she begged Ryan. I'm going as fast as I can. The drive to the lake house felt like it took hours instead of 45 minutes. Sarah's mind raced with terrible possibilities. Vanessa at the lake house. Vanessa hurting Marcus or Devin. Vanessa taking Jake. When they finally pulled into the lake house driveway, everything looked normal. Marcus's car was there. Devin's truck. No sign of Vanessa. Stay in the car, Ryan ordered. No, that's my son in there. They got out together, Ryan moving ahead of Sarah with his hand near the concealed weapon Sarah knew he carried. They approached the front door quietly. It was ajar. Ryan pushed it open slowly. Marcus? Devin? No answer. They stepped inside. The living room was empty. Jake's toys were scattered on the floor, but Jake wasn't there. Jake? Sarah called out. Baby, where are you? A sound from upstairs, footsteps. Then Jake appeared at the top of the stairs, rubbing his eyes. Mama, why are you yelling? Relief flooded through Sarah. She rushed up the stairs as fast as her pregnant body would allow, pulling Jake into her arms. Where's Uncle Marcus? He went to the store. Uncle Devin's outside. Devin outside, where Vanessa had been taking photos. Ryan was already moving, heading toward the back door that led to the lake. Sarah followed, still holding Jake. They found Devin by the dock, unconscious but breathing. Blood trickled from a wound on his temple. Devin! Ryan dropped to his knees, checking his brother's pulse. He's alive. Call 911. Sarah was already dialing when she heard it. A car starting up. Tires on gravel. She ran to the front of the house, still clutching Jake, and saw a vehicle speeding away. A blonde woman at the wheel. Vanessa had been here, at the lake house. She had hurt Devin, and now she was getting away. She's leaving, Sarah shouted. Ryan was already running for his truck. Get inside, lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone except the police. He tore off after Vanessa's car, leaving Sarah standing in the driveway with Jake in her arms and her brother unconscious by the lake. This was the false victory turned nightmare. Sarah had exposed Brad. She had won the battle. But in doing so, she had pushed Vanessa past the breaking point, and now Vanessa had nothing left to lose. The worst was still coming, and Sarah, with her brothers scattered and her family vulnerable, had no idea how to stop it. The ambulance arrived within 10 minutes. EMTs rushed to Devin's side while Sarah gave statements to police officers who had followed. Devin came to as they were loading him onto a stretcher, confused and disoriented. What happened? Sarah asked, gripping his hand. I was checking the property perimeter, Devin said groggily. Saw someone by the trees, went to investigate. She came out of nowhere, hit me with something. A rock, I think. Did you see her face? Blonde woman, young, really angry. Devin winced. I'm sorry, Sarah. I should have been more careful. Don't apologize. This isn't your fault. Marcus arrived back from the store to find police cars and an ambulance in the driveway. His face went white. What happened? Is everyone okay? Sarah filled him in while they followed the ambulance to the hospital. Devin had a concussion but no serious injuries. He would need to stay overnight for observation. Ryan returned an hour later, frustrated and empty-handed. I lost her. She knows these back roads better than I thought. Either that or she had a head start. Did you get the license plate? Yeah, already gave it to the police. They've issued a bolo. Be on the lookout. But Sarah, I don't think she's running. I think she's planning something. The police agreed. Detective Rivera arrived at the hospital to take statements. Vanessa Cole is wanted for assault, trespassing, and making terroristic threats. We've frozen her bank accounts, but she had cash. Probably from whatever Brad was giving her. She could be anywhere. What about Brad? Sarah asked. Can't you get him to tell you where she might go? Brad's not talking. He's lawyered up. Claims he had no idea what Vanessa was planning, that she's obsessed with him, that he's a victim too. Sarah wanted to scream. Of course Brad was claiming to be the victim. That was his specialty. That night, they all stayed at the hospital. Jake slept on a cot in Devin's room while Sarah, Ryan, and Marcus took turns keeping watch. No one wanted to go back to the lake house while Vanessa was still out there. Sarah couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Vanessa's face. The rage, the desperation, the promise of revenge. Around 2 in the morning, Sarah's phone buzzed. Another text from an unknown number. A photo, this time of the main Bennett house. Sarah and Brad's home. Vanessa standing in the front yard smiling at the camera. The message, I'm going home. See you soon. Sarah showed Ryan immediately. She's at the house. That's good, Ryan said. That means the police can catch her there. Let me call Detective Rivera. But Sarah had a terrible feeling. Vanessa wasn't just going to the house. She was going there for a reason. To destroy something, to take something, to make a point. I need to go there, Sarah said. No way. Are you insane? That's exactly what she wants. Ryan, all my important documents are at that house. Jake's birth certificate, my medical records, everything I need for the custody case. If Vanessa destroys them, they can be replaced. And what about Jake's baby photos? His artwork? All of his memories? I'm not letting her destroy everything we have left. Marcus joined them. Sarah's right. We can't let Vanessa have free rein to destroy Sarah's property. But we're not going in without backup. They called Detective Rivera, who agreed to meet them at the house with patrol units. But it would take time. The police were stretched thin, dealing with multiple calls across Austin. We'll wait in the car outside, Ryan decided. Keep eyes on the house until the police arrive. We're not engaging with her. They left Jake with Devin, who insisted he was fine to watch his nephew despite the concussion. The drive back to Austin felt endless. Sarah's hands wouldn't stop shaking. When they pulled onto Sarah's street, everything looked quiet. The house was dark except for one light burning in the upstairs bedroom. Brad and Sarah's bedroom. She's still there, Marcus said quietly. Ryan parked down the street out of sight. Police are 5 minutes away. We wait. But then they saw movement. The front door opened. Vanessa emerged, carrying what looked like a gas can. What is she doing? Sarah whispered. Vanessa poured gasoline along the front porch, then disappeared back inside. Oh my God, Sarah breathed. She's going to burn it down. Police are 2 minutes away, Marcus said, checking his phone. But 2 minutes might be too long. Sarah could see Vanessa through the downstairs window now, pouring more gasoline, creating a trail, leading to the kitchen where Brad kept his expensive liquor collection. She's making it look like an accident, Ryan said. A kitchen fire, insurance fraud or something. Sarah made a decision. She opened the car door. Sarah, no. Ryan grabbed her arm. I'm not letting her burn down my house. Everything Jake has is in there. His entire childhood. I'm not giving her that. Before Ryan could stop her, Sarah was out of the car and running toward the house. Well, waddling quickly. 8 months pregnant didn't allow for much running. Sarah! Ryan and Marcus were right behind her. Sarah reached the front porch. The gasoline smell was overwhelming. Through the window, she could see Vanessa in the kitchen, pulling bottles of alcohol from the cabinet, smashing them on the floor. Sarah tried the door. Locked. She pounded on it. Vanessa, open this door. Vanessa's head whipped around. When she saw Sarah through the window, her face transformed into something ugly and feral. She didn't open the door. Instead, she lit a match. No, Sarah screamed. Ryan was already moving. He grabbed a garden stone from the front yard and hurled it through the window. Glass shattered. Ryan reached through, unlocking the door from the inside. They burst in just as Vanessa dropped the match. The gasoline caught immediately. Flames erupted across the kitchen floor, racing along the trail Vanessa had created. Marcus grabbed the fire extinguisher from under the sink, spraying frantically. But it wasn't enough. The fire was spreading too fast. Vanessa stood in the center of the chaos, laughing. Too late, it's all gone. Everything you loved, gone. You're insane, Sarah shouted over the roar of flames. I'm not insane. I'm in love. Brad was supposed to be mine. We were supposed to have everything. But you couldn't just let go. You had to ruin it. Ryan moved toward Vanessa, trying to get her out of the burning house. But Vanessa pulled a knife from her pocket. The same knife she had tried to use on Sarah at the lake house. Don't touch me, she screamed. Police sirens wailed outside. Too late to stop the fire, but maybe in time to stop Vanessa. It's over, Marcus said, still spraying the extinguisher. Vanessa, put down the knife. You're only making this worse for yourself. Worse? How could it possibly be worse? I lost Brad. I lost everything. You never had Brad, Sarah said, surprised by how calm her voice was despite the flames and smoke. He was using you, the same way he used me. He doesn't love anyone but himself. You're lying. Am I? Ask yourself why Brad's not here, why he didn't bail you out, why he's not fighting for you, because you were just a tool to him, a way to get rid of me without getting his hands dirty. Doubt flickered across Vanessa's face. That's not true. Brad loves me. He's going to marry me. We're going to have our baby. You're not even pregnant, Sarah said. The police ran a medical check. You faked the whole thing. Vanessa's face crumpled. How did you? Because you're a fraud, a con artist. You targeted Brad, researched him, figured out how to manipulate him. But you made one mistake. You underestimated me. Police burst through the front door, weapons drawn. Put down the knife. Vanessa looked around wildly, seeing she was trapped. Fire behind her, police in front. No escape. This is your fault, she screamed at Sarah. All of it. If you had just left when Brad wanted you to, none of this would have happened. If I had left, you would have done this to the next wife. And the last, you're not a victim, Vanessa. You're a predator, and now you're done. Vanessa lunged at Sarah, knife raised. Ryan tackled her before the blade could make contact. They went down hard, Ryan pinning Vanessa to the floor while officers swarmed in to restrain her. You'll pay for this, Vanessa screamed as they cuffed her. All of you, you'll pay. She was still screaming threats as they dragged her out of the burning house. Firefighters arrived within minutes, containing the blaze before it could spread beyond the kitchen. The damage was extensive, but not total. Most of the house was savable, including, miraculously, Jake's bedroom and all his belongings. Sarah stood in the front yard covered in smoke, watching firefighters work. Ryan and Marcus stood beside her, both looking equally disheveled. We need to get you checked out, Marcus said, eyeing Sarah's pregnant belly. Make sure the baby's okay after all this stress. Emma's fine, Sarah said, feeling her daughter kick strongly. She's a fighter, like her mama. Detective Rivera approached, looking grim. Vanessa Cole is going to be charged with attempted murder, arson, assault, and a long list of other crimes. With everything we have on her, she's looking at decades in prison. Good, Sarah said simply. And Brad? He's being charged with embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to attempted murder. His lawyers are trying to work out a plea deal, but the DA isn't interested. He's going to trial. Sarah felt a savage satisfaction. Brad and Vanessa, both facing prison, both destroyed by their own arrogance and greed. What about me? Sarah asked. And Jake? You're in the clear. Everything you did was self-defense or protecting your property. No charges. Detective Rivera paused. Mrs. Bennett, I have to say I've been doing this job for 20 years. I've never seen anyone handle a situation like this with such determination. I had good reason, Sarah said, pressing her hand to her belly. I have two children who need me. I wasn't going to let anyone take that away. As they drove to the hospital to get Sarah checked out, Ryan looked at his sister with something like awe. You know, when this all started, I was worried you were going to break. I did break, Sarah said honestly. The old me broke completely, but something new grew in her place. Someone stronger. At the hospital, doctors confirmed that both Sarah and Emma were healthy despite the stress and smoke exposure. Jake was fine, happily eating ice cream with Devin and regaling him with stories about the big fire. Sarah sat in the hospital room, exhausted but strangely at peace. She had exposed Brad. She had stopped Vanessa. She had protected her children. She had won. But as Sarah was about to discover, the story wasn't over yet. Because while she had been focused on Brad and Vanessa, she hadn't noticed the one final threat lurking in the shadows. The threat that would cost her everything. After the fire and Vanessa's arrest, Sarah thought the worst was over. She spent the next day at the lake house with her brothers, trying to process everything that had happened. Brad was in custody. Vanessa was in custody. The police had all the evidence they needed. Sarah felt safe for the first time in months. She shouldn't have. That Thursday evening, Marcus and Ryan had to drive back to Austin. Marcus needed to meet with his lawyer friend to finalize the restraining orders and custody paperwork. Ryan wanted to check on the main house, assess the fire damage, start filing insurance claims. I don't like leaving you alone, Ryan said, looking worried. I'll be fine, Sarah assured him. Vanessa's in jail, Brad's in jail, Devin's here. We'll be okay for a few hours. But Devin was still recovering from his concussion. Around 8 p.m., he went to lie down, asking Sarah to wake him if she needed anything. Sarah settled on the couch with Jake, reading him bedtime stories. Her son was finally starting to relax, the trauma of the past week fading, as children's trauma often does. He fell asleep in her arms, and Sarah carried him carefully to his bedroom. When she came back downstairs, it was 9:30. The lake house was quiet, peaceful. Sarah made herself tea, thinking about the future. She would file for divorce, get full custody of Jake, raise Emma as a single mother. It wouldn't be easy, but she would manage. She always did. A knock at the door startled her. Sarah froze. Who would be knocking at 9:30 at night? The lake house was isolated. No neighbors for half a mile in any direction. She looked through the window. A blonde woman stood on the porch, clearly visible in the porch light. Vanessa. But that was impossible. Vanessa was in jail. Sarah had seen them take her away in handcuffs. Sarah kept the door locked. You need to leave. There's a restraining order. Please, Sarah. Vanessa's voice was different, softer. She sounded like she was crying. I need to talk to you, woman to woman, please. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to call the police, but a small part of her was curious. What could Vanessa possibly have to say? How did you get out of jail? Brad posted bail, but I'm not here because of him. I'm here to apologize, to tell you the truth about everything. Sarah hesitated. This felt like a trap, but Vanessa looked genuinely distressed, tears streaming down her face. Against her better judgment, Sarah opened the door a crack. You have 5 minutes. That was her fatal mistake. Vanessa's tears vanished instantly. Her face transformed into something full of rage. She shoved the door open with enough force to send Sarah stumbling backward. You stupid bitch, Vanessa screamed. You ruined everything. Sarah backed up, hands raised defensively. Vanessa, stop. Leave now or I'm calling the police. Call them. I don't care anymore. Brad was mine. That life was supposed to be mine. You need help. Please just leave. I'm not leaving until you understand what you took from me. Vanessa lunged forward, shoving Sarah hard. Sarah, off balance from her pregnancy, fell backward. She hit the kitchen counter with brutal force, then crumpled to the floor. Pain exploded through Sarah's abdomen. Something was wrong, very wrong. Jake appeared at the top of the stairs, woken by the shouting. Mama? Jake, go back to your room. Sarah tried to shout, but her voice came out as a gasp. Get Uncle Devin! Jake, Vanessa screamed. Come here. Come see what your mama did. Jake started crying. Stop hurting my mommy. He ran down the stairs, his small fists hitting Vanessa's legs uselessly. "Leave my mommy alone." Vanessa kicked Jake aside, not hard enough to seriously hurt him, but hard enough to send him tumbling into the wall. He hit his head and started wailing. "Don't touch my son!" Sarah tried to stand but couldn't. The pain in her abdomen was overwhelming. She looked down and saw blood. Too much blood. Vanessa stood over her, breathing hard. Her eyes had a wild, unhinged quality. This wasn't the calculating manipulator from before. This was someone who had completely lost control. "You think you won?" Vanessa's voice was ice. "You think exposing Brad changed anything? He still loves me. He'll forgive me for this. We'll still be together." "You're delusional," Sarah gasped. "Brad doesn't love anyone." "Shut up!" Vanessa raised her foot, positioning it over Sarah's pregnant belly. Terror unlike anything Sarah had ever felt flooded through her. "No, please, not my baby. Please, Vanessa. She hasn't done anything wrong." "You took my future," Vanessa said, her voice eerily calm. "I'm taking yours." Sarah saw Vanessa's muscles tense, saw the heel start to come down. This was it. This was how she would lose her daughter. "No!" Sarah tried to roll away but wasn't fast enough. The heel came down onto Sarah's abdomen with brutal force. The pain was inhuman. Sarah's scream echoed through the lake house, raw and primal. It barely sounded human. Jake was shrieking, "Mama, mama, mama!" Vanessa raised her foot again. "One more for good measure." Sarah couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The world was spinning. She felt wetness between her legs. Blood, so much blood. "Emma," Sarah whispered. "My baby. Please, someone help my baby." Vanessa's foot was raised, about to stomp down again, when the front door exploded inward. Wood splintered and glass shattered as the door was literally kicked off its hinges. 3 men burst through the opening in rapid succession. Ryan moved like lightning, crossing the room in 3 strides. He tackled Vanessa mid-stomp, catching her before she could bring her heel down a second time. They crashed into the dining table with enough force to collapse it completely. Marcus dropped to his knees beside Sarah. Oh God, Sarah! Stay with me! Stay with me!" Devin scooped up Jake, turning the crying child's face away from the horror on the floor. "Don't look, buddy. Don't look at mommy right now. I've got you." Vanessa fought like a cornered animal, clawing at Ryan's face, trying to bite him. But Ryan had military training. Within seconds, he had her pinned face down on the hardwood floor, his knee pressing into her back. "You're not going anywhere," Ryan growled. Vanessa's hands shot toward her purse, which had fallen during the tackle. She managed to grab it, pulling out a knife. "She has a weapon," Marcus shouted. Ryan saw the blade flash in his peripheral vision. Vanessa was twisting, trying to stab him. He caught her wrist mid-swing, slamming it against the floor. The knife skittered across the hardwood. "You're done!" Ryan pinned both her wrists, using his full body weight to keep her down. Vanessa was still screaming, her voice shrill and broken. "She deserved it. She ruined my life. Brad said it would be easy. He said she wouldn't fight back." Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer with each second. Marcus's hands hovered over Sarah, afraid to touch her and cause more damage. "Where does it hurt?" "The baby," Sarah whispered. "Emma, I can't feel her. Marcus, I can't feel her moving." Sarah's hand moved to her vitally. All day, Emma had been kicking, active, and strong. Now there was nothing, just terrible stillness and pain. "Help is coming," Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. "Just hold on, please, Sarah, hold on." "Jake," Sarah's voice was barely audible. "Is Jake okay?" Devin's voice came from across the room, choked with emotion. "He's okay, he's safe, I've got him." Sarah tried to see her son, but her vision was blurring. The room was spinning. She could hear Jake crying, calling for her, but his voice sounded distant, underwater. "Tell him," Sarah gasped. "Tell him mommy loves him." "You tell him yourself," Ryan said fiercely, still pinning Vanessa. "You stay awake. You stay with me." Police burst through the shattered door, weapons drawn. They saw the scene immediately. Vanessa pinned to the floor. Sarah bleeding, Jake crying in Devin's arms. "We need an ambulance," Marcus shouted. "Now!" "Already on the way," one officer said. moving to take over, restraining Vanessa from Ryan. As they pulled Vanessa to her feet, Etienne, cuffing her, she was still screaming. It's her fault, all of it. She wouldn't just go away. Brad wanted her gone. We were going to be happy. Brad doesn't love you, Ryan said, his voice full of contempt. You were just a tool, and now you're going to prison for murder. She's not dead yet, Vanessa screamed, struggling against the officers. She's not dead. They dragged her out of the lake house, still screaming threats and accusations. The EMTs arrived within minutes that felt like hours. They immediately went to work on Sarah, checking her vitals, examining her injuries. 8 months pregnant, Marcus told them. Abdominal trauma, she's bleeding. The EMTs exchanged a look that made Sarah's heart sink. It was the look of professionals who had seen this scenario before and knew how it usually ended. We need to transport immediately, one EMT said. Sir, we'll take good care of her. Ryan rode in the ambulance with Sarah, holding her hand. Sarah could barely keep her eyes open. The pain was overwhelming, but worse was the stillness in her womb. Ryan, Robert, I can't feel her moving. Why can't I feel her? Ryan's voice broke. She's strong, like her mama. She's a fighter. Tell Jake. Sarah's eyes were closing. Tell him mommy loves him. Tell him every day. You tell him yourself. You stay awake. Sarah, stay with me. But the darkness was pulling Sarah down into a place where there was no pain, no fear, no awareness of the life slipping away inside her womb. The last thing she heard before everything went black was Jake's small voice, raw from crying. Mommy, wake up. Please wake up. At the hospital, Sarah's brothers sat in the surgical waiting room, destroyed. Marcus prayed for the first time since their parents died. Devin paced, his hands shaking with the need for something he hadn't touched in 3 years. Ryan sat with Jake, who wouldn't stop asking questions no one could answer. Is mommy okay? The doctors are helping her. Is baby sister okay? Ryan couldn't answer that. He just held his nephew closer. After 90 minutes that felt like 90 years, a doctor emerged. Dr. Martinez. She looked exhausted. Which of you is family? Ryan stood. We're her brothers. How is she? Sarah survived the surgery. She's stable. Relief crashed through all 3 men. Marcus actually sobbed. Devin turned away, shoulders shaking. Dr. Martinez held up a hand. But I'm very sorry. We couldn't save the baby. Time stopped. What? Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. The trauma was too severe. By the time Sarah arrived, there was no fetal heartbeat. We performed an emergency C-section, but Dr. Martinez's professional mask cracked slightly. She was already gone. I'm so sorry. Ryan felt something break inside his chest. He looked down at Jake, who was staring up at him with confused eyes. Baby sister is sleeping? Jake asked. Ryan knelt down, tears finally falling. Yeah, buddy, she's sleeping. When she wakes up, can I show her my truck? Ryan pulled Jake into his arms, breaking apart completely. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, you can show her. But Emma Rose Bennett would never wake up, would never see her brother's toys, would never open her eyes, take her first breath, cry her first cry. She was gone, and no amount of justice, no amount of revenge, no amount of winning could bring her back. When Sarah woke up hours later, the first thing she saw was Ryan's devastated face. Where's my baby? She asked immediately. Ryan couldn't speak. He just shook his head, tears streaming down his face. Sarah's hand went to her stomach. It was flat, bandaged, empty. Where is she? Sarah's voice rose to a scream. Where's Emma? Ryan, where's my baby? Ryan took her hand, his whole body shaking. Sarah, I'm so sorry. The wail that came from Sarah was inhuman, a sound of grief so profound it didn't seem possible one person could contain it. A nurse came in, compassionate but professional. Mrs. Bennett, I know this is devastating, but we need to know. Would you like to see her? To say goodbye? Sarah couldn't speak. She just nodded. They brought Emma Rose Bennett wrapped in a soft pink blanket. She was tiny, perfect, peaceful. She looked like she was sleeping. Sarah took her daughter in her arms for the first and last time. She rocked her, singing the lullaby she had sung every night to her pregnant belly. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. Her voice cracked, broke, but she kept singing. Marcus brought Jake in, a child psychologist present to help him understand. Mama? Jake climbed onto the bed carefully. Why isn't baby sister moving? Sarah had to explain death to her 3-year-old while holding her dead daughter. It was the cruelest thing she had ever had to do. Baby Emma. She's become an angel, baby. She had to go to heaven. But I wanted to meet her. Me too, baby. Me too. Jake touched Emma's tiny hand with one finger. Bye-bye, sister. I love you. Outside the room, all 3 of Sarah's brothers were destroyed. Ryan punched the wall so hard his knuckles bled. He didn't notice. Marcus was sobbing, praying. Devin was outside smoking for the first time in 3 years. He stubbed it out halfway through, disgusted with himself, knowing Sarah wouldn't want this for him. Finally, gently, the nurse came to take Emma away. Sarah wouldn't let go at first. She couldn't. How do you let go of your child? How do you hand over their body and accept they're never coming back? I know, the nurse said, her eyes wet with tears, but it's time, sweetheart. Sarah kissed Emma's forehead one last time. Mommy loves you. Mommy will always love you. They carried Emma away and Sarah collapsed into primal, soul-shattering grief. Vanessa Cole had killed Sarah's daughter, had stolen every future Sarah would never have. The birthday parties, the first day of school, teaching her to ride a bike, walking her down the aisle, holding her own grandchildren someday. All of it, gone, destroyed by a woman who wanted what wasn't hers. Sarah would survive this. She would heal eventually, in the way that people who've lost children heal, which is to say she would learn to carry the grief, to function despite it, to live with the hole in her heart that would never fully close. But the woman who woke up in that hospital bed was fundamentally different from the woman who had walked into the lake house that night. That woman was dead too, killed along with her daughter. Someone new would emerge, someone harder, someone who understood that sometimes no matter how hard you fight, no matter how smart you are, no matter how much you love someone, you still lose. And that lesson would define everything that came after. 6 months after Emma's death, Sarah sat in the courtroom holding a framed photo of her daughter. She wanted the jury to see Emma's face, to remember this wasn't just a legal case. This was a murdered child. Vanessa's trial came first. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage showed everything. Vanessa forcing her way into the lake house, attacking Sarah, the brutal stomp that killed Emma, Jake trying to protect his mother, the brothers bursting in to save her. Medical experts testified about the massive abdominal trauma, explaining how Emma had died from the assault. Jake's recorded testimony destroyed the courtroom. The bad lady hurt mommy's tummy where baby sister was, his small voice said. I tried to stop her, but she was too strong. Several jurors cried openly. When Sarah testified, she looked directly at Vanessa. You stomped on my belly knowing my daughter was inside. You heard her heartbeat. You knew Emma existed, and you decided she didn't deserve to live. Vanessa's defense tried to paint her as mentally unstable, a victim of Brad's manipulation. But when Vanessa took the stand, she destroyed her own case. She deserved it, Vanessa screamed during cross-examination. Sarah ruined everything. Brad and I could have been happy. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge was scathing. Ms. Cole, you showed no remorse then and no remorse now. This court sentences you to 30 years in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. As they led Vanessa away, she turned to Sarah. This isn't over, she mouthed. Sarah stared back, unblinking. Yes, it is. Brad's trial followed immediately. He tried to claim innocence, painting himself as another victim of Vanessa's manipulation. But Vanessa testified against him, turning state's witness. Brad gave me the lake house address, she told the jury. He said to do what needed to be done. He wanted Sarah gone so we could be together. The prosecution presented emails between Brad and Vanessa discussing the Sarah problem. Financial records showing Brad funding Vanessa's lifestyle while drugging his pregnant wife. Testimony about the embezzlement scheme. When Sarah gave her victim impact statement, she looked Brad in the eyes. You stood before our family and promised to love and protect me. You broke every promise. You brought your mistress into our home, poisoned me, gaslit me, and when she killed our daughter, you didn't even visit me in the hospital. Sarah's voice was steady, powerful. You tried to erase me. Instead, you erased yourself. I'm taking your house, your money. I'm raising your son to be nothing like you, and everyone knows what you are. Brad tried to speak. Sarah, I never meant for Emma. Don't you dare say her name. You lost that right when you paid her murderer's bail. The jury found Brad guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, embezzlement, and fraud. He received 25 years in prison. As they led him away in handcuffs, Brad screamed Sarah's name. She kept walking, not looking back. In the months that followed, Brad's assets were seized and sold. Sarah received substantial settlements. She wasn't rich, but she was financially secure enough to build a new life. She moved into a smaller house with no memories of Brad, got a job at a women's shelter, helping domestic violence survivors escape dangerous situations. Sarah spoke at conferences and shelters, telling her story. You are not responsible for what was done to you, she told rooms full of survivors. You're only responsible for what you do next. If you choose to fight, I'll fight with you. She turned her tragedy into purpose, making Emma's death mean something beyond just loss. But the grief never left. It was always there, a constant companion. Some days Sarah could function, smile, feel happiness. Other days she could barely get out of bed. On what would have been Emma's first birthday, Drauz de Mario and Jake visited the cemetery with cake and flowers. They sang happy birthday to a tiny gravestone. I love you, baby girl, Sarah whispered, forever and always. She had survived the unthinkable, lost everything and rebuilt. And while she would never be whole again, she was here, breathing, fighting. For Emma, for Jake, for herself, that was enough. 14 months after the attack, Sarah woke to Jake singing in his bedroom about dinosaurs and his sister in heaven. She smiled despite the ache in her chest. This was healing, learning to carry grief while still living. Her Thursday therapy sessions with Dr. Anderson had become routine. How are you sleeping? The therapist always asked. Better, only waking twice a night instead of 5 times. That's progress, the nightmares. Less frequent, less vivid. Sarah had learned that healing wasn't linear. Some days she felt strong and capable. Other days the grief overwhelmed everything. Both were okay. Her daily routine centered on Jake. Wake up, preschool drop-off, work at the women's shelter, pick up, dinner, bath time, bedtime stories. The mundane tasks of single parenthood kept her grounded. The new house had 3 bedrooms, hers, Jake's, and 1 empty room she couldn't bring herself to touch. Emma's room, even though Emma had never lived there. There's no timeline for grief, Dr. Anderson had told her. No deadline for moving on. Sundays belonged to the cemetery. Sarah and Jake brought flowers, drawings, stories about their week. Jake talked to his sister's gravestone like she could hear him. Hi, sister. I can read chapter books now. Mama says I'm really good at it. Sarah watched her son include Emma in his life naturally, unconsciously, and her heart broke and healed simultaneously. At the women's shelter, Sarah met women trapped in situations eerily similar to her own. Young, pregnant, terrified to leave abusive husbands. You're not crazy, Sarah told them firmly, and you're not alone. One woman, Emily, approached Sarah after a support group. They said you lost your baby. Sarah nodded. My husband's mistress attacked me when I was 8 months pregnant. My daughter didn't survive. I'm so scared. I was scared too, but you have us. We'll help you get out safely. Sarah squeezed her hand. It won't be easy, but it's possible. And on the other side, there's freedom, peace, life. Every woman Sarah helped was a way of honoring Emma's memory. Her brothers remained constant presences. Ryan called daily. Marcus visited weekends. Devin came twice weekly. They had dinner together every Saturday, Jake in the middle, chattering about his adventures. You seem better, Marcus observed one evening. I'm different, Sarah said. The person I was before is gone. I'm someone new, harder but more aware of what matters. On Emma's 2nd birthday, Sarah organized a charity run called Emma's Run for Hope. Over 300 people participated, raising $50,000 for the shelter. My daughter lived only minutes, Sarah told the crowd, but her life meant something. Today we honor her by helping women and children escape violence. That evening at the cemetery, Sarah placed her race medal on Emma's grave. We ran for you today, baby girl. So many people ran in your honor. That night, Sarah finally opened Emma's empty room. She started planning to transform it into a reading nook for Jake, where he could feel close to his sister without it being a shrine to loss. Small steps. That's all healing was. Sarah poured tea and checked emails from shelter clients thanking her for help. Requests to speak at awareness events. This was her life now. Purpose built from tragedy, meaning constructed from loss. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she had, and she would make it count. She looked at a photo of herself 8 months pregnant, glowing with anticipation of meeting Emma. She barely recognized that woman now, but she honored her, honored what she'd hoped for, what she'd thought, what she'd become. Sarah Bennett had been shattered into 1,000 pieces. She'd put herself back together differently, but still whole, still standing, still fighting, still here. And that was its own kind of victory.